Okay, take three. I think we are as good as new now. Let's see. Okay. Perfect. Perfect, perfect. Happy Monday, everyone. Hi, Maybeth. How are you? All right. Perfect. Today we are talking about, so I had the opportunity to connect with Rainey. She is from Australia and she is a fellow podcaster of Irrelevant Podcast. And she's going to join me to talk about how politics is similar and different from us here in America. We were chatting it up, and there's a lot of similar issues. Um, but often that's overshadowed because for lack of a better word, Americans, we can be annoying and we overtake everything. And we talked a lot about, right? So we talked a lot about joining together to talk about what is similar, what is different. They have a lot of issues as well with, yay, let's see if it's going to let you join now. Okay, yay! Oh my God, Instagram is petty. It like made it. I couldn't request because I didn't update it, but I didn't know how I needed to update it. So Instagram is petty.
We're all good now.
All good. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Awesome, awesome. So I was just kind of chatting and letting everyone know what we were talking about. And I'm like super excited to talk about how things are in your part
Yeah.
of the world.
Yeah.
So, again, welcome to Coffee and Combos. And please tell everyone, well, before you tell everyone about your podcast, um, are you a coffee or a tea person?
Coffee, definitely.
So how do you guys over in Australia, like, is coffee like a big staple? Like, what's like your traditional coffee over there?
Yeah. It's very different though. Ours is just like coffee, coffee. Like, we don't like Starbucks. They tried to bring Starbucks here. It didn't really last because it
Yeah.
was all like fancy drinks and stuff. And we were all like, I don't know what that is. Just give me a normal coffee. Like, yeah, it didn't last very long. So
So, like, is a traditional coffee over there just like milk and sugar? Is it like a black cup?
it's, yeah, like either milk and sugar or just black coffee. There's not too much fancy stuff going on.
Like, so Maybeth here says coffee is mostly garbage here. We don't, especially here, like in where I am. So Connecticut is kind of like small, and like coffee, tea shops, like we don't really have anything. If
Yeah,
it's not like box in the store, like we don't have anything. Um, but that's like really cool. I feel like coffee's big here. You know, we
yeah,
like that. That's very just typical American having coffee in the morning. Tea is starting to come to be more um, accepted as kind of like traditional or part of adult culture.
yeah. We have a lot of, I don't know if you guys have it, but we have just like heaps of instant coffee, like just like the satchels that you just tip it in. That's us.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Is that popular where you are? The instant
Yeah,
coffee?
yeah. So much more. Like most people I know, they're like, "What is a coffee press?" Like they just have instant.
Instant coffee isn't as popular, but we definitely are about like our coffee stops, our coffee shops, and like the whole process. Like everything just has to be a process here. But tell everyone. So for those of you just joining, Rainey and I got to connect on social media, and we're very excited to discuss politics and our neck of the world. And please, before we jump into that, please tell everyone about your podcast. How did you get started? What do you like to talk about on your podcast?
Yeah, so I sort of got my podcast started. I, until like recently, don't really listen to podcasts that much, but I've recently left my job to come back and study university again, and I've got my 2-year-old daughter. So, sort of in the meantime, I'm like, oh, I hate to not have stuff to do. So I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is a way that I can make a little bit of a positive impact or just spread a little bit of joy while I've got those moments to myself where I'm not at work, or I'm not studying, or I'm not with my daughter. So I just wanted to use my time in a beneficial way, whether it's for myself or for other people. So I like to talk about a lot of things, and I have a lot of random knowledge on a lot of stuff, which is why it's called irrelevant advice, because I do have so many things where I'm like, I don't really know how this is going to go for people in their day-to-day life, but it might be something that is a conversation starter later down the line if someone brings it up. They're like, hey, I remember hearing something about this a while ago. So they've got like a little bit here and a little bit there. And I'm studying criminology, so I have a lot of information about like the justice system in Australia, and a lot of our content that we do is based on America because so much research is based off America. So a lot of our like study load is comparing our justice system to America, like rehabilitation centers, prisons, stuff like that. And it really highlights like what we can be doing better and what other parts of the world can be doing better as well. So that's another thing that I would love to talk about a little bit more.
Absolutely. And I think that's like a great place to start because I feel like oftentimes with our criminal justice, we take this punishment lens. Like, if you do something wrong, you need to be punished. We need to make sure you pay for what you did. And then, like, the person gets out and then they do it again. And we're like surprised, like, why did you do it again? We punished you. Let's
Yeah.
punish you some more. And it's like, it's not solving anything. So I'd be really interested to start with what have you seen in your research and how are things done in Australia in terms of criminal justice and rehabilitation?
I think in Australia, we still have a very long way to go with how our prisons work, our like jails and whatnot, how that goes. There's a lot of research based on Sweden and Switzerland. Their
Mm-hmm.
systems are heavily based on rehabilitation rather than punishment. The punishment in itself is you are in a prison, you're cut off from the outside world. That is your punishment. You're not in
Right.
civilized, but the punishment should not be that you don't get to learn, you don't get to better yourself so that when your sentence is finished, you can go out into the world and be a better person. Because in Australia as well, still a majority of people who go to jail will reoffend within the first year of being,
Mm-hmm.
which clearly is showing that we are doing absolutely nothing to help them, which isn't helping society. We're putting dangerous people back out there when they have the potential to change, learn new skills. You cannot expect you send someone to prison and they get out, they can't get jobs, they can't do anything.
Right.
What else do they do other than reoffend to get where they need to be? They're just people trying to survive. The punishment is not we absolutely strip you of every single right. It's you're cut off from the world, but you are still a human. You have your human rights. Like so Australia still has a long way to go in that sense. I don't think that we're doing the right thing in that way. It's also very difficult to like establish that our Indigenous youth and
Mm-hmm.
our population, the criminal rates are very different. But because there's such a like our Aboriginal people are only 1% of our population, so it's
Mm-hmm.
very. So all of the research shows that oh well, it's mostly white people, or it's mostly white people who die in jail or don't get medical attention, but they're not paying attention to the fact that our Aboriginal people only represent 1% of our population.
Mm-hmm.
The population, the proportion of each population is disproportionate of,
Right.
so it's showing a massive bias in our correctional system and our justice system. Studies have proven that an Indigenous child and a white child, juvenile, that commit the exact same offence, all the same circumstances, they will get a harsher sentence than
Wow.
at youth, which speaks for itself. And the amount of conversations I've had where they say, oh, but it's all about circumstance, it's all about where you are. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
research says This is not just an opinion, it is research saying the exact same situation. If these two kids are literally there committing the crime together, doing the exact same thing, and I guarantee it'll be the white kid who speaks back to the police, because that young black kid is fucking terrified. They're not going to say,
Right? Like they're like, no, like we already know how this is going down.
yeah, you're like, please stop talking, I'm going to get in trouble. Like,
Hmm.
so that white kid gets a slap on the wrist, and our young Aboriginal person gets put into a juvenile centre, not given any resources, not help.
Mm.
They get out, and then that's where that proportion of the 1% ends up reoffending or back in correctional centres. So it's very racist, our justice system here.
But it's interesting that even in your part of the world, you're having very similar conversations, right? Here we always try and bring it back to the facts because people say the same thing. Well, the numbers of white people that are killed by police brutality are higher. But like you're saying, it's the percentage, right? So the black and brown community is so much smaller and the rate is so much higher. And that's why there's cause for alarm. And there's a lot of conversations of presenting the data. But then there's people that are just really like they're closed minded. They don't want to hear that. They don't want to participate in that conversation. They're like, this has been our justice system. If you don't like it, don't commit the crime. And we're finding that that's just not helpful. That's just not real people policies.
Yeah, it's, I would say definitely the issues in America seem to be like we don't have as much, like on such a great scale, police brutality. Our police officers don't have the same powers that they do in America. There's clearly a reason for that because of police brutality. Like we are not allowed to just pull our gun out at any second. Like it has to be life or death. You are at your absolute last choice before you even consider pulling your gun out. So we also have very strict gun laws here. So there's not
Really?
very, very strict. We have guns, but it is a long process to get guns.
Share
So,
a little bit about that. Like, what does that look like for you guys?
so, about, I think it was 2001, we had we had a mass shooting here, and
Mm.
our prime minister basically just said, we can't have, if stuff like this is going to happen, it was a school. So he was basically just like, if this is going to happen, we can't have guns. And Australia was sort of just like, yeah, that makes sense. Obviously, this,
Wait a minute. You guys saw a problem, saw a solution, and then you're like, we're going to do that? Like, that happened?
but yep, that's what happened. So yeah, we still have guns here. We do not have like assault rifles, stuff like that. All of our guns are basically for hunting. We don't really have a lot of protection guns because of our laws. We don't need them. So, like, we don't need to be thinking, oh, if I walk out of the house, do I need something to protect myself? Because no one else has a gun either. So we're not worried that someone's going to shoot us. I don't need to fire back at anyone. So yeah, it's my partner. He has a gun license. It took him about 6 or 8 months to get his gun license. We don't own any guns. We don't keep guns in our house. His parents do. They live out on a property. We're from a small town, so they live on a property and they go like pig hunting and stuff. So they
Yeah.
have there, but it's like everything, there's no guns in the house ever. It's all like in the shed, locked up, rarely ever used. Like it's guns just aren't a big thing here, and no one wants them either. It is a very popular opinion that why would we need guns? We don't need them. So
Oh my, that's so weird because here it's like the opposite. It's like, why would you want to take our guns? It's like, you don't have a gun. Why don't you have a gun? Like, you need to have a gun. And it's just, it's weird, but you're exactly right. I love how you put it. There's this culture of like, why do we need to feel like we need to protect ourselves from each other? Like, why is that a thing? But we're very much like, we got to protect ourselves. Well, like, why? Like, what are we protecting ourselves from?
yeah, no. It honestly, if one of my friends said, "Oh yeah, I have a gun," I'd be like, "You have what? What? Where did you get a gun? Why do you have a gun?" Like, I think I know of one gun shop. It's 2 hours away, which like is a whole new town away. It's And I think I've been there one time with an ex-boyfriend, and it was again for hunting stuff. And we didn't buy a gun; we just went in there and bought a bag. So like, yeah. And I know I've heard that you can just like go to like your gun stores like integrated with other stores.
So like Walmart, which is like, do you guys have Walmart there? So
No, but
Walmart, so yeah, so Walmart, you can like go in, if not all, most of them. There is this resistance to have common sense gun laws. So like to say, okay, we need to have a background check, make sure mental health is in order, make sure that, just all the checks and balances. Um, Locally, there was this law you used to have two letters of recommendation. They just got rid of that. And people were like really ecstatic, like, okay, we don't need to do that. There's this push to make um, getting guns faster, be a faster process. So everything is very gun driven. Even when we had a big issue, Sandy Hook a couple years ago, and all these children have died because this man had all these assault rifles, went in, and there was this outcry to make common sense gun laws. And the attitude was like, we sympathize with you, but we're not taking the guns. Like, it's just not happening. So it's really interesting to hear that, you guys were like, okay, if you're not going to be responsible, then we're going to have more laws,
yeah,
because it just contradicts. So like here, we have a very punishment attitude as far as our prisons go, but not people who have bad behavior with weapons. It's just very different. We're very lenient. Same thing with our officers. We're very lenient. We talk about punishment, except like we have these weird exceptions. When you're in a position of power or authority, your behavior is excused. But if you are acting because you're in a position of poverty, so you steal, then you need to be punished.
yeah,
It's just bizarre.
yeah. Like one big thing, like how I mentioned that the American issues and politics are heavily flooded into our media. We are very, very up to date with everything that happens in America. Every shooting that you guys have, we know.
Because there's a lot, right?
That is in our news because they're like, well, we don't have any shootings to talk about, so we'll talk about theirs. But I can speak for almost all of Australia when we say it pisses us off when we're watching it and we're like, how are they not changing this? Like, what side? You're like, oh, I wish, like, with your election, all of Australia is, oh my God, like, I wish that we could vote because I cannot handle it.
We're
It's,
just a mess. We're a mess. We're a mess.
yes. Very, very true. Like it's so hard watching from the outside because like I don't see it as our country, your country. Like I am of the opinion that we are the human race.
Right.
All that makes us is a piece of land. We're not a different
Mm-hmm.
species. We are all one people. So why is it so like difficult to one like anytime someone speaks out and says, "Oh, what's going on in America?" They're like, "You're not from America. Just stop speaking." And I'm like, sorry, shit."
That is us. Like, but we're in everyone else's business. Like, we can tell every other country what you should and shouldn't do. But God forbid, you're like, hey, we have this policy that really works. We have this system that really works. We're like, what do you mean? We don't
Yeah,
want to hear that. You're not from here. It's like, I don't
yeah,
understand.
yeah. It's so hard watching from, and I know like New Zealand's the same. They will like because they're like a sister country to us. So we're like, it's just Australia and New Zealand just think, what are they doing? Get it together. Like someone's gonna help them out, surely.
Oh my gosh, with coronavirus, so like New Zealand, um, and you guys had like really good like coronavirus response,
We
and
have
we're
like
just like no, like you guys are just outside, like you're having a good time.
our life is exactly literally nothing has changed. Since, because I've been in a small town since coronavirus started, we've had zero cases in our town. We've had close to zero cases in our state.
I
So, like,
can't.
we haven't had to wear masks. Only in airports we have to wear masks. But, like, other than that, we can literally, like, just do whatever we need to do. There's nothing stopping us. We can go out. We have like restrictions on gatherings and stuff, but I think the restrictions are like, oh, you can have 100 people at a gathering. So it's like not really an issue here at all. Only some of our major cities, but as soon as like we had 3 cases in Melbourne and they're like, oh, lockdown, 3 cases, get lockdown.
Oh my God. We could have been outside.
Yeah.
Couples and karaoke could have been going on, Brittany. Y'all could have been outside if we would have wore a mask.
Yeah. On it, like I was, where was it? I was watching something on Facebook and it was saying like if coronavirus was killing white people at the rate that it is killing black people, one would be wearing masks. And it's very, very true. Like if until it affects you, no one gives it. Like they're just like, it's not an issue. I don't know anyone that's died, but you don't need to know someone. All you have to do is hear about it. Like, and
we're very self-absorbed. It's like, well, until it happens to me in my house, then it doesn't matter. Yeah. Couples and karaoke, we're on our way over there, right? So couples and karaoke needs to just come over to your neck of the woods. Because like we just can't get it together. We're still seeing videos, repeated videos of people in stores refusing to wear a mask, getting into fights because they don't want to wear a mask. There was just this presidential convention, CPAC or whatever it is, and people didn't want to wear a mask because it was like this pro-Trump rally. I mean, we can't even get that down. We've had 500,000 people die because of this, and we're still talking about it's not real.
Yeah, like it's a myth. They're like, oh, it's the government's agenda, it's propaganda. I'm like, oh my, no, like that's such a brainwashed way to think. And they think if you believe it, you're brainwashed. And you're like, even if it was, why would I read that? Even if it was like a tiny conspiracy, I'd be like, why would I risk my family's health, my friends? Why? Like, it's been going on for over a year now. Like, something's got to be going on. And like, I watched a girl on TikTok and she was like, when people ask me why I'm wearing a mask now, I just say, I don't want the government to see my face. You want the government to steal your identity? And I'm like, that's such a great way to like, just like use your conspiracy against this.
That is perfect. That is absolutely perfect. Because at this point, it's scary to see. And like, it's not even like, you would think this is from people who are not educated or have some sort of mental illness to have this level of delusion. But we're seeing people that are high up in authority, who are leaders, who are business owners, who are people involved in the community. Just like, why would you listen when the government tells you to put on a mask? I'm not taking a vaccine. I'm like, even if it's not going to work, right? Even if it's not, like, just put someone else's need above yours and just do it.
But like, you wear seatbelts because the government tells you to wear seatbelts. Like, where do people think that started? Like, you're following laws every single day. You might not realize it, but it's just a subconscious thing. I put my seatbelt on, like stuff like that. It's very simple, and I'm sure one day it'll become very normalized to be like, I'm sick, I'm going to wear a mask out. This, I feel as though, like, especially in Australia, our like hygiene and sanitation is through the roof now, and I know that it will stay like that for a very long time. Like, after this, I think about the things that I don't know how, like, this is very bogan to say, but do you know what a shoey is?
No, what's a shoey?
It's like drinking alcohol from a shoe. So you're at a party, someone says, oh mate, do a shoey, and you're like, oh, obviously you've said to, so I will. Now that I think about that, I'm like, before it's like, oh, Australian antics. Now it's like, that's so unsanitary. That's why I don't care about getting a vaccination, because I'm like, I've drank alcohol out of I'll be right, I'll be fine. So like stuff like that, I'm like, oh God, some of the things we used to do, actually, like, filthy, really, honestly, when you think about it. But like stuff like that, just washing your hands, not just touching everything in stores, stuff like that. like people are
Was
really gonna.
washing your hands a big thing? So like when coronavirus first started, there was like everywhere, like make sure you wash your hands when you come out the bathroom. Like it was a big thing. And there was like jokes of like, do we not as adults know that you should like wash your hands? Like what is going on here? Was that a big thing for you guys, like making sure you wash your hands, hand sanitizer? Did you guys like you take all the toilet paper from the store?
Yes, they did do that, and like when I didn't, because I had like a whole pack, so I was like, this is gonna last me forever. I live with a 2-year-old. The only other person, like my partner, he works away, so I'm like, I don't even need to think about him. He's out of town, doesn't matter. So I had like one pack of toilet paper between my daughter and myself, and she was just starting to potty train, so like she didn't really use toilet paper. I didn't even finish the whole pack, and I was like, why are you all so stressed? Like, how much do you need to like all of it? But it started like we have hand sanitizer literally everywhere now, but people started to think that hand sanitizer was more effective than washing your hands. And I was like,
Hmm.
have you ever read anything? Like, if that was the case, there would only be hand sanitizer in toilets. Your hands is effective. You wash your hands and then use hand sanitizer. You don't just use hand sanitizer. And everyone, like, we ran out of hand sanitizer as well. So people started like making their own and stuff.
Yep.
I'm like, you realize that there's like shelves and shelves full of soap still. Just use soap. It's not that difficult.
No. Everyone lost their mind. Uh, Toilet paper. What else was really big? Um, Food for a while, like shelves were empty with food, and then like we were like, okay, food is still gonna be there. Um, yeah, like
Yeah,
I
I
just
think
can't get. I like I'm gonna have to come visit
yeah.
because like you guys get to go outside.
Like that's the thing. I don't know any like Australians who actually want to visit America now. I always used to visit,
Girl, don't. You're not missing anything.
I used to say like I'd really love to go and visit and like see what it's like. And now I'm like honestly, I don't even wanna I don't
No.
even go over there. I've seen movies, I follow people on TikTok, this and that. Like I know enough. I don't need to visit. That's good enough for me. People saying in
No.
the
Like, don't go. Yeah, Danielle, listen. I'm like, where can I go? Canada, will you take me? France, like someone take
yeah,
me.
yeah. It's
Um,
grateful for the country that I live in when I see how down. Because like we recently just had my mum's 50th, and we had 40 people travel to another city. We went on a big holiday together, and there were 40 of us. And I was just saying to my mum, like this was just last week, and I was saying to my mum, imagine if we lived in America, like we would not be able to do this. Like we would have no chance to visit each other and have
no.
full travel to another city just for a holiday, just for a 50th birthday. Like we're very lucky, but it's like the mindset of our community that has put us in this position, and our government. Like I'm very grateful for the way that they have handled this whole pandemic and everything. Like I don't think the support that they're giving financially to the people who have been laid off is enough. It's now only $150 a fortnight, but it's still like the fact that they have handled the situation to get people back to their jobs is better than nothing.
So I'm just stuck on the fact that your government is giving you money. So let's talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, and
So what does that look like? So what's a fortnight for you guys? Is that like 2 weeks?
yeah, 2 weeks. So $150 every 2 weeks. Originally, it was $400 every 2 weeks, and then every few months, it was like a $500 supplement thrown in there. So like it is like a good amount, and lots of people didn't entirely lose their job. They just had their hours cut back to like what the minimum was.
Mm-hmm.
I was like an essential person at our work. So I worked for a car dealership, but we service all of the emergency vehicles in town. So I was the only person in my job role at the time. So I didn't lose any hours. I think for 1 week I lost hours. And then they were like, oh, no, that was a bad idea. Come back. We need you. So, like, I didn't have to worry about that. And even though I was at work, I was still getting the supplement. So everyone was getting that supplement. It wasn't like if you're unemployed, if
Yeah,
you are,
yeah.
it was for everyone, and it still is for everyone. It's been extended until, I think it's till May. We still have that. And basically they
What?
assess it. It was meant to end in September. They reassessed it and they're like, no, I think we still need this. So they kept it going, and then they've extended it twice since then as well. So very lucky.
That's so like my mind is blown because even again, like if you are the wealthy, if you're doing okay, there's a lot more relief. It's like we're going to support you. Even thinking about to the bailout in 2008, banks and things have gotten a bailout because of the recession. And when it comes to like the everyday people, so we got when it first started, was it like $400 or something like that? Then we just got $600 in December. So it's just, and every time there's still this opposition to give people 1,400 more dollars, which in the grand scheme of like if you've been off from work this whole time and you've had like, I mean, that's not even going to cover most of your bills if but that's neither here nor there with our government. But it's just bizarre that I think it goes back to what you said. You guys had a sense of community
Yeah.
where it's about, how do we help and support each other? And here it's very much every person for themselves. I want my rights to dominate yours, even if that means I have to oppress you. I want to make sure me and my family have something, even down to the environment. It's like, well, the environment is fine now. I'm not affected by it, so I'm not going to do anything to ensure that there's something years down the line. So, I mean, I just think that's just fascinating.
Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong, there definitely are people who don't believe in it or think, like, well, why do they need that? And there's
Hmm.
still people who will say, like, oh, why do you need Centrelink? Like, just go get a job without taking to understand that people have different circumstances, have different reasons for not being able to go out and do that. But it's very much like a small town mindset in that
Hmm.
sense. Like, I've lived in Brisbane, I've lived in the city. I did my first year of university there. The town that I come from is very small. We have one high school here, like we're very little.
Hmm.
Um, so it's like, and we're a coastal country town. We're like one of the only. So we are a coastal town, a beach town, but we're very rural. So our town is run by farms. So it's
Hmm.
very lot of rich farmers' kids out there thinking like daddy has bought them everything, but they're like, oh, just go get a job. And I'm like, your dad bought you a speedboat. What do you mean get a job? I can't just go and buy $100,000 speedboat. Like that's not. They're like, oh, this is just what normal people have. I'm like, baby, that's a luxury. Like you're living high. Just because you live in a small town doesn't mean that you're not living the good life. But
Hmm.
move to the city, very little of that. Like there's in my town, there's like very few openly gay people. More so recently, like in the last few years, so many of my friends have come out, and like the way that our town has accepted them is quite surprising. But when I was in
Hmm.
the city, the first group of friends, I had shaved my head at the time. I shaved my head with leukemia, and I moved to the city, and like people just assumed I was gay. So my first friends was just a bunch of gay people. And they were just like, when I said, oh yeah, my boyfriend, one of the guys was like, you have a boyfriend? And I was like, is this like? And then I realized I'm like, I'm the only straight person here. And I was like, oh, so this is what it's like for my friends at home,
Oh,
gay people in a massive group of straight people. I was like, oh, good to know. But it was like just so common and accepted in like the big city. Everyone's just like, yeah, we just live our lives. Small town mindset though, everything's so different. Like it is bogan.
how is that with you? So, like, do you do you guys even have to have rights that protect those that are gay from? So, like, under the Trump administration, he had rolled back rights that had protected them from having like equal health care and being able to participate in the military. Do you guys have like laws specific to that group that prevent segregation, oppression, or has it just been kind of just accepted as you're just a person?
Yeah, so we don't have laws to protect things like that. We don't particularly feel as though we need them because those rights haven't particularly been. There were never laws saying that you couldn't do that, so they didn't have to right the wrong. It wasn't accepted, and people were scrutinized for it, but it wasn't illegal. The
Mm.
only really have is we recently 2016 gay marriage legalized. Again, it wasn't illegal, but like it wasn't, so you could get married, but it wasn't a legally binding recognized marriage. So basically a lot of people's viewpoint was, well, you can still get married, it's
Hmm.
just not really like acknowledged. So it was very difficult to push that understanding that, well, it's not that we need it to be legally recognized for our love. If our partner is in hospital and you need, like, they're on life support, you don't have any rights to say
Mm.
wish for, or how you know that they would wish to be treated, or if they pass away, what they would want after that. You have no rights to that. You could have been married for 50 years, but you still don't have those rights. And
Mm.
family who are probably estranged and haven't accepted what's like your lifestyle are making all of the decisions for someone they may not have seen in 20 years. So having that law legalized, one, you shouldn't have to fight to have that. Like no one, no straight person has to ask, can I marry
Right.
them, anyone else? But it is like a big thing about it being you having a legal say in someone's life. And I think, personally, I think that that was what drove the point, because there will always be so many people that just don't agree with that lifestyle, but
Mm.
can somewhat understand the legal aspects of it. They,
Right.
opinions, but can sometimes understand the facts that you're telling them. So I think that's what really drove it. Other than that, like, um, at the moment, we're really trying to push for like trans rights with like being able to use bathrooms. We have a lot of gender neutral bathrooms here, so we
Really?
do, but still, like in schools, it is a big thing. Like for students to be able to use their preferred bathroom, that's a big thing because um, some schools don't have gender neutral bathrooms, but a lot of public places do, like most of them. And honestly, if a girl walks into a guy's bathroom here, no one gives a shit. If a guy walks into a girl's bathroom, we either expect that he's trying to have a spew, or that if if someone was going into your bathroom to sexually assault you, you you saying, "Hey, you're a boy, you're not supposed to be in here." That's not going to change anything. Like saying still going to assault you. So like your best option is to just get the hell out of there. So if you're like genuinely feeling uncomfortable, there's literally nothing you can say, whether they're trans or not. So like, what is the difference? If someone wants to go into a girl's bathroom and assault someone, they will do it. They're not going to go and change their entire lifestyle just so they can have a peek. Like, that's a lot of effort to do something they could have just done anyway. Just walk in there and be like, "Hey, girls, how you doing?" Like, it's not going to
Our
make.
ad, it's so weird because we present issues like if trans people have rights, then our whole system of government, our whole system of living will crumble. If we have gender neutral bathrooms, our whole morality or this will crumble. It is a very like doomsday mentality. And it's a very, like you talked about, feeling like, oh my God, I will be assaulted. I will be hurt. I will not be able to protect myself if this changes. And I have no idea how we got there, how that started, but we are very much like protection focused,
Yeah,
except for when it comes to gun laws to protect kids in school or against oppression when people, like right now we're seeing a lot of the Asian community being assaulted. And we're just like, we're just not going to talk about this. So we're just going to pretend this isn't happening. And it's
yeah,
just like, it's so bizarre.
yeah. Or it's like it's in the social media for 2 weeks and then forgotten about forever. That's
Yes.
massive thing here right now. We recently had Australia Day, which we are trying to. change the date of, because the date that Australia Day is held on is a very significant date in the genocide of our Indigenous peoples.
Mm.
So much misinformation about the date that people are using misinformation to fight the change. It was in our social media for a few weeks. Everyone says their piece, oh, I support it, change the date, all this, and then they forget about it. And I'm like, well, you were fighting for it 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Keep that fight going until we change this date. We don't need it to be in 6 days time. We need for next year us to not
Mm-hmm.
go out and have these protests and do this all over again every single year. The same way that you guys, like, we use Black Lives Matter here, but not really in the same way. What we say we have always was, always will be, and that means always was Aboriginal land, always will be Aboriginal land, because obviously
Mm.
we had our land stolen from us. We had our women and children raped, stolen from their families. A lot of us lost our heritage and our culture. Only in the last few years are, like, my family finding our culture again, because my great grandma was part of the stolen generation. So herself and all of her sisters were taken from their mother because
Wow.
they were half white, half black. And when that happens, they got taken away from their families and given to other families, basically. So they were taken away. And then my grandmother was put up for adoption when she was younger. So it took us a very long time to find our way back to where we came from, who we are, finding our culture. And, like, we sort of follow a bit of a saying, like, it doesn't matter how milk you add to your coffee, it's still coffee, because
Mm.
have so many white Indigenous people, and it's because of our history. There's a reason that we are only 1% of the population. There was,
Really?
and they basically just wanted to eradicate us. When the Europeans came here, they called Australia Terra Nullius, which means no man's land, which anyone with 2 cents about them knows that there were people here. But to get around that, the government classed our Indigenous peoples as flora and fauna, which means plants and animals. So
Mm.
our Indigenous people were classed as animals, and that's
Wow.
they didn't have human rights. They were not classed as people. So they didn't need to give them that right because they weren't people, as they said. And so they basically just, like, tore our entire country apart. And, like, we had hundreds and hundreds of different languages. Most of them are gone now. We still have, like, tribes, and we have Indigenous communities and towns still, mostly on the other side of Australia where it's very rural. We have a lot of dry towns now, which means that we don't have alcohol in them, because when the Europeans brought alcohol over, the Indigenous people had never had alcohol before, and it affected our bodies in a way that it's very odd. Like, there's a lot of research behind it that I'm not particularly too informed about to speak
Mm-hmm.
about. Like, it alcohol just reacts differently with Aboriginal people. So we have a lot of dry communities to stop alcoholism, and it helps with, like, our domestic violence rates and family violence and stuff like that. So a lot happened with the colonization of Australia as to why the date is so significant. And, like, it's not the date that the genocide started, which is what a lot of people say. It was the date that they rose the flag and claimed
Mm.
our land, which always was, always will be our land, and they claimed it as their own. And that's why we had a sorry day, which is basically where the government just said, we're sorry, hope you forgive us, hope, we're like, well, you stole our entire culture.
That's our Thanksgiving with the
Yeah.
Native Americans. Like,
Oh, sorry. And now people are just like, oh, Australia Day is only like 40 years old. Our country is 150 years old.
oh, wow.
Is our country, as our Aboriginal land is hundreds and thousands, millions of years old. But people just refuse to acknowledge it. And yeah, so they have only celebrated Australia Day for 40 years, but they call it a tradition. And we can't get rid of a tradition. That's how my family
Right.
raised. How about we
Right.
get
God
tradition?
forbid we give up our traditions to be culturally sensitive to those that are hurting. Yes.
We can't get rid of racist traditions. They have to stay. Like, that's what our country is built on, racism. So why would we ever get rid of that? It's like the mindset of some people, they think we are moving together, like we are moving forward together. That's what Australia Day is about. How is that what it's about when our entire Indigenous population is saying we don't
Mm-hmm.
we don't want to celebrate this day with you. If you want to celebrate a day as a whole, as one people, then we need to change it to a date that we can all appreciate and we can all love. But like no one wants to listen, and social media for 2 weeks and then it's gone again, pops back up next year.
Mm.
It's constantly like in and out, and no one truly is fighting to stay in the fight. It's just when it's relevant.
Right. And you're exactly right. Like we see that a lot with Black Lives Matter. I think that over the years it had like popped up and then fizzled out, popped up and fizzled out. And I think with COVID and just seeing repeatedly how egregious the effects were and having more time to advocate and more time to protest, I think really helped keep the issue. And it was so tied to our politics because, if someone said Black Lives Matter, people would confront it with Trump 2020. And so it became very politicized, which helped the issue be so prevalent throughout. Um, but I think it gets hard with some of these issues that are rooted in tradition, um, to really combat them and really have people keep the fire because it really is a marathon and not a sprint to have change. And you really have to keep it up, keep it up, keep it up. So
Yeah.
um, definitely Coffee and Combos, we stand with the Aboriginal community and making sure that you guys have equality and are free from oppression because like MLK said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I because like Black Lives Matter is so much in our news, and it is genuinely heartbreaking to the point where it's makes you angry. It is so hard
Mm,
in another country and watch these things happening, and watching people not understand that peaceful protest, no one's listening to you. And they think, well, why are they getting violent now? Why are there riots? And you're like, well, why do you push them to that point? It's not about why are they there, it's how did they get there? What was the road to? No one jumps to, I'm going to go out and I'm going to be a violent protester. That is no one's first thought. People have been silent, people have quietly protested, people have stood there peacefully with their signs, they have spoken in respectful conversations for as long as anyone can remember. But every protest that has gotten any, it has to get violent because that's where people push us. It's not where anyone wants.
exactly.
No one wants
That's
to
the
be that.
only thing that people seem to understand. It's like, okay, you didn't understand my words, but you understand when I break this window.
Yeah, so I want to be a police officer, but I wholeheartedly believe the saying that all cops are bad, because
Mm,
one bad police officer will bring down the entire police force. So
right.
we have a process that is standing with everyone, our community, our citizens, and police officers who want to speak out against other police officers, because it is so, so difficult for someone to speak out against other police officers. It holds back people's careers, promotions, people get put on standby,
Right.
people get put off work, they're getting paid but they're not allowed to work. So they can't make a difference in their own society. We need to be protected and be able to say, mate, you're not doing the right thing and I need to report you because I care about my job and I care about these people enough to say something to you. It's all about, oh, brotherhood. Like, you can't rat on
Yes.
your own.
Yes.
Like, I can't lift this brotherhood up if you're holding me down. We need to cut off the wagons that are pulling us back for us to
Mm-hmm.
where I was at the pub on the weekend and I had a security guard say to me, oh, what, you want to be a police officer? You're not going to make any difference. No one makes any difference these days. And I was like, because of people like you who say things
Yeah.
like, you need to be saying, like, I really believe in the ripple effect. If I can do
Mm-hmm.
one person, they can do one thing to change another person. If I have a 40-year career in the police force and I change one person's life positive, like, that is all I want. If I can make a difference to one person, because I know that they can go on and do incredible things, just if I change one circumstance for them, that, like, that's what it's about. It's not going to be in 2 years our world's going to be great. It's going to be, by the time I leave, I want the world to be better for my daughter, for my grandchildren.
Right.
Because I'm not someone who believes in the afterlife, so this life is the only life that I'm getting. I believe that what I'm doing right now, I'm not doing what I'm doing to get somewhere else in my next life. I'm doing it for the people who come after me. It's not for me. It is for people to grow up in a world where they don't need to fight for stuff like this, because it feels
Mm.
such a ridiculous fight. Like, why on earth does anyone need to argue these things? This should seem so simple and just common sense. Like, obviously people need to have these rights. Obviously I shouldn't have to go outside and worry that something's going to happen to myself or to a friend. Like, no one should have to feel that way. Why is it so confusing for other people to understand that? Like,
Mm.
it should make sense to everyone. Like, that's just, it's common sense. It should be, but it's not.
Absolutely. And that's like so unfortunate that it's just like, just do the right thing. And, as a kid, you're taught just do the right thing, be kind to everyone. And it seems like we've somehow, as we get to be adults or whatever, we lose that. We become very just like cynical, as if like no good thing can happen or it only happens to a few people. But I truly believe that we have the power to create an atmosphere and a space that breeds kindness, that I don't think that we have to have racism and oppression. I think this world is big enough for us all to grow and shine and to be in. We just have to believe it and want it and do our part.
Yeah.
And I hope that 20 years from now, 50 years, 100 years from now, we're not still having these same fights. Um, because it just would be very sad to see that we've gotten so smart as a people, as a human race, but we couldn't get the foundational things correct.
Yeah. I think so many, like, society genuinely needs to be torn all the way down before we can build anything back up. We need to completely just strip everything down and start from the beginning. Everything needs
Mm-hmm.
so many laws that you wouldn't even think about, that are so historic, but because they're not always used, like, where they'll be like, oh, we have found this 70-year-old law that is going to get us out of this. And I'm like, everything needs to go back to the start and just start over, redefine everything, go back through, because so many things, like, if it's not relevant right now, it doesn't matter until it becomes.
Mm-hmm.
This should have been changed a millennia ago. This should never have even happened. But now we have to think about it, and now we have to change it, and we have to bring it up, and it has to be a big thing. And there's going to be people who fight us. Like, it needs to just all go back to the beginning, start again. And I know there's like a big difference between like our voting system and yours. We have,
Mm-hmm.
it's called a double majority law. So it means that the majority of all of Australia's people and the majority of our states need
Mm-hmm.
to be on the same thing. So if a majority of the people say no, but a majority of our states, due to
Yeah.
different, say something otherwise, then we need to start again. We need to reevaluate the law that we're doing, try to make it fit our people, because um, our voting system is, it's for the people by the people. So it means that it's anyone.
We say that, but we don't live by that.
But we do our best to live by that, and it basically means that, like, we do what we can to represent
Mm-hmm.
everyone, and that is how it needs to be from the beginning. And I don't know if like that would work for your country because your voting system is very different to ours. Australia has one of the most diplomatic voting systems in the world, so it works the best for everyone. Sweden probably has the best in the world. Theirs is very like everything seems to be exactly how they want it to be. It seems like a perfect world over there. But yeah, I think America is so rooted in like your rights and your First Amendment, this and that. Like,
Oh my gosh, we are like so stuck on, well, our founding fathers wanted this. Yeah, they also didn't think that we'd be having like cars and everything else. Like, we so pick and choose.
they had to pack their gun before they could use it. Like, they can't just go into a school and shoot anyone. Like, it took them a good while to load their gun before they could do anything. So they're not just going to go out willy-nilly and shoot people. Like, so it's very like our laws need to evolve with us, but
Exactly.
it's so rooted in tradition that it's like, no, we can't change that because this is how it's always been. You're like, that doesn't mean it's
Exactly. 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 It's just very interesting because like we kind of begin talking about, like America, we are so American centered and we don't get a lot of news from around the world unless it's a crisis. So to
yeah.
be able to hear and see like there's very similar issues and to see how that was addressed where you're living is really interesting and fascinating. Um, because again, we take this really nationalist approach of we need to create our own rules, our own ways of doing things. And it's like, why reinvent the wheel? If someone else is doing it and it works, can't we take it and adapt it to our culture and our needs? And it's like, no, we're just not going to do that.
Got to do things our own way. It has to be our own idea. But
Right.
yeah.
Last question for you. How was it for you guys seeing the events on January 6th, where there was the attack on the Capitol, where we had all those Trump supporters? Did you guys get a chance to see that? And kind of what was that process like for you guys?
We did watch it, and the first thought of everyone I know is how embarrassing is that?
It was so embarrassing. It was so embarrassing.
And just from like, because we followed the election, so we heard everything that everyone was saying. We heard the whole Biden's not going to win. But if Trump wins, you guys are probably going to raid the Capitol. And then they do exactly what they said that Biden supporters are going to do. And I'm like, it's so funny to, it's like watching a reality TV show. I,
Yes.
I have to like just pretend that it's not real and I'm just watching TV because it is like, it's like, you're watching it and you're cringing at it because it's embarrassing and you're like, how are these like the same people that we are? Like, how?
Yes.
And so like it was quite, I could never imagine something like that happening here. But just watching it was like, oh, that's quite, it's very like you don't expect something like that to happen. But then someone says, yeah, but it's America. And you're like, yeah, yes,
We are now like a third world country. You're just like, yeah.
I say that all the time. I literally say, America is like a third world country. They think they have so much freedom, but they don't. They don't realize how oppressed they are by their own people. They're not being oppressed by hunger and this and that. It's their own people making them a third world country. Like it's just being torn down from the inside. They don't need a war. They're doing it to yourself.
Oh, we'll be lucky if we're here another 4 years. I mean, it's terrible. If coronavirus doesn't get us, it'd be something else. It'd
Yeah.
be our own self. It'd be our own doing.
Yeah, but I always say I'm like they're not going to need a war. They'll probably civil war or something like that. Like, and it worries me though because Australia is an ally of America. So if you guys ever do,
Mm,
we are involved in that. That's a big reason for like why your politics are so important to us and to lots of other people around the world because our countries don't go and try to create wars or like threaten other countries, but America does, and we're tied to you. So it's very important to us, and it sort of encroaches on our rights and our livelihood because we may end up in position that we didn't want to be in and we didn't ask for. But these people who don't want to take opinions from any outside countries don't listen. So we'll end up being involved. So it's very like important to us, but ends up being more important than our own issues, which is detrimental to our growth as a country. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm so glad we got to connect.
No, yeah.
If you had to say the top three biggest issues for you guys, what would they be?
Probably for myself, and something that is pretty constant
Mm-hmm.
through Australia, is our Indigenous rights, and just having people understand getting our land back, just having people understand our cultures and our traditions and how to respect and help us all grow, because we would love for the rest of Australia to be involved in our traditions and our culture. We would love to teach people about that and for them to understand why we're fighting for what we are. So our Indigenous rights are very, very important. Um, I think still our LGBTQ community is really like struggling at the moment just to be recognized and accepted the way that they need to, despite
Mm.
things does not mean that it's loved and accepted. And going along with that, our homelessness rate in our youth is very, very high. A third of our homeless population is under the age of 18, and 45% of those who have been surveyed have said that it's because of domestic violence or family violence.
Mm.
And a lot of that comes down to being accepted in the house that they are in by the family that they're with, and that goes along with our LGBTQ rights and their acceptance. So that's something that I think everyone sort of, and our government, like we tend to have them on our side a lot of the time, not all the time. That's why we're still fighting for things, but we're also fighting against people who don't believe what we believe as well. So hopefully one day we'll all be in a position where we're here to not push other people down, but rise them up to our level. Because
Absolutely.
none of us are going to get any better if we're not all doing it with each other. So hopefully we can sort some stuff out.
Absolutely, absolutely. I am so glad we connected. I hope to have you back for a podcast episode where you can really detail the Aboriginal culture, some of the issues that face that community, and what people can do to support you guys in Australia and to support that community. Because, like I said, I think we have to take a zero tolerance approach to oppression, because there's enough space in this world for us all to get what we need.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I'd love to stay in contact with you and keep the conversation going. And I would love to help you learn about our country.
I so do. I'm like so excited. Like I so want to just, please, any news, any like that, please send me because I just think, again, we're very stifled with information that doesn't have to do with us. We
Yeah.
are the self-absorbed child in the world family.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely be sure to, like, any updates or any progress that we make, I'll love to share it with you because I'm always excited about it. So I'd love to have other people be excited about it too, and sort of even just help spread our word about what we're trying to fight for as well.
Please do, please do. And before I let you go, I ask my guests and my listeners what's in their cup. And this is the part where I ask them, what are the three things that you are putting in your self cup to get you through the rest of this week? And while you think of your answer, I will give you mine. I'm very inspired by this conversation, so I'm putting inspiration to really find out how can I continue to use my platform, my voice, my abilities to create a space where there is equality and to combat against injustice and oppression. So inspiration is in my cup. I had a really good cup of matcha tea, so I'm gonna add that to my like literal cup. And then the third thing that I need, I have like 3 books I'm reading. I want to finish at least 2 of the 3 books by the end of this week. I'm almost done. So that would really help me feel just rounded. So if I can get a little bit more tea, finish 2 of the 3 books, and be able to inspire others or find out how to use my voice to be more inspirational this week, I will definitely feel accomplished. So, what are you adding to your cup?
Um, Firstly, education. I think
Mm.
very important to me. I love to learn about new things. I love to teach other people new things. My daughter and I, she's 2. We're currently learning sign language. So,
Cute.
yes, it's very exciting. She is picking up on it a lot quicker than I am. Kids just take everything in.
Sponges.
I think education is incredibly important. That's always in my cup every week. I'm always trying to learn new things. Um, Creativity, I'm very big on
Mm.
use my creativeness to make a difference. I'm very passionate about art and I like to use my art to send a message. I love to support other artists in expressing what they feel. Our Indigenous art is very different to any other type of art I've ever seen. It is incredibly beautiful, and I love to support Indigenous artists and share their work because I think that through our pictures, our pictures tell a story. Every
Mm.
symbol means something. So if you look at an Indigenous piece of art, it's telling you a story. It's not just to be beautiful, it's an entire story of someone's life, someone's day, someone's journey. And that is an experience of its own to be able to understand that or to learn about that. That is absolutely beautiful. And lastly, just protecting my mental health is very important to me. It is the only way that I will thrive, that my daughter will thrive, the people around me. I need to protect my energy by
Mm-hmm.
giving out positive vibes, brings them in. It can turn people into the people that you want them to be. Someone may have always had negative influences in their life. If you can be that positive influence, they can become your positive influence and for someone else. And we'll all end up being happier and healthier because it all starts with our mental health. You can't be physically fit if you're not mentally fit. And it can be very draining emotionally to not be entirely happy or to
Right.
the things going on in your brain are affecting your day-to-day life. So mental health is also in my cup. Those are my 3 things.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Listeners, please check in with yourself. See what is it that you need so that way you can make it through this week, make it through this day. Link up with people. Use this tool called social media and link up with people who have a common goal because the more we link up, the more that we can create a better world and a better society. And also, please go over to Irrelevant Facts podcast. If you want to drop your information so people can get that in the chat, that would be great. Thank you, Brittany. Says great show. I think this was absolutely wonderful. It was really great to talk about global matters and to talk about things that are going on across the world. Please go over to Irrelevant Advice, the podcast. Give a like, a follow, check out the podcast. I know I'm definitely going to binge listen over the weekend. Any last words before we separate?
I just hope that everyone has an incredible, well, I guess you guys are going into your night now, but I hope you guys have an incredible day tomorrow. I hope everyone in Australia has an incredible day. And I think that we can all change the world.
Absolutely. And I'm like so jealous of your background. It's you have like some nice beachy
I
breeze.
know.
It's sunny.
I live at the beach. That's the beach. I'm living
Listen,
life.
let me get my passport together. Rainy, take care and be well.
Alrighty. Thank you. See you later.
Bye.